Hey, good morning, Drive Time. Welcome back. Glad you guys are with us today. I always enjoy the opportunity to share my friends with you guys and to hear from the people who are in my sphere of influence. And today we have that opportunity. We have Keith Koby, and Keith and I have known each other for about a year and a half or so. And just what I've come to realize is he has a unique perspective, and what I've learned is that his career has varied from the U.S. military to the corporate world into ministry, and he just has a very cool way of tying all that together in his perspective with God. So, Keith, welcome to Drive Time. Thanks for spending part of the morning with us today, and I'm really excited for what you have to share with us today.
Thank you, David. It's great to have this opportunity, and thank you very much for inviting me on. The real question when you and I first chatted was, what's the value of secular work in terms of what comes to mind? Should we all be striving? Something I struggle with is, should we all be striving for full-time ministry work? Facts are that work dominates our life. And I know Pastor Corey's talked about this too, but the average person spends between 45 to 75% of their life in work or work-related tasks. And when you think about it, it's just, it's work, work, work. Everybody, you got to work. It takes up a lot of time. And I thought it would be, helpful to share a little bit of my testimony in that area and what I've been through really in the business world the last 30 years or so. But, starting off when I was earlier in my young adult life, I went off into the workforce. I really struggled between what I thought God wanted me to do, from a gifts and talents and ministry and mission perspective. And actually, my wife and I, we've taken all the different surveys of, what are your gifts and talents and so forth. And that was early in our lives. And what the difference between that and what I was actually doing every day to feed my family, there was just this difference. And I thought at that point, early in my walk, I really felt that to follow God's will, that I needed to be really in full-time ministry work, a man of the cloth, out in the mission field, traveling the world or the like. And out of college, I was really blessed, and it's an amazing story, really, in general, how God has always been with me and guided me, and even when I didn't know it, He was leading my path. But so early in my life, it was I landed my dream job like right out of college, and it was an interesting start. Landed a job, I got married. Started off, with this great company, was commissioned with the U.S. Army and the Reserves as an officer. And at that time, obviously young, hard-charging, newly married engineer, working for, the General Electric company and the medical systems. And of course, all at that time, I went right into graduate school to pursue an MBA. Was really committed in the Army Reserves and dedicated to what they sold me as, 1 week in a month and 2 weeks per year, initially leading troops. So I was just like feeling like things were really happening there. I was young, ambitious, growing as a young Christian as well, being a new husband, leading small groups, journaling every day, involved in our church, generally seeking out God's will. In the back of my head, the issue of valuing my secular work, what I was doing every day, whether it was in the Army Reserves or at GE or in the career that I chose there, it kept rearing its head around the church that we attended, and it actually came to a head when they actually offered me a full-time business administration job within the church. So you can imagine, that stopped me in my tracks. Deep down, it brought back up this controversy, if you will, of between do I have to be in full-time ministry, or can I be a good Christian or follow God's will and be in the secular work world? And luckily, in hindsight, I didn't have to make the decision because God was in control, as I mentioned. And at about that same time, I received orders, marching orders, as part of Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And I remember the letter, based on the Army's needs, I will now become a chemical officer. So that kind of put the decision of, do I go into work at the church full time, on the back burner? So off I went with the Army, and left my wife, who at the time was pregnant with our first child. My deployment dictated that because I was away, I ultimately did not accept the church job back home. And then when I returned back, we stayed in Kentucky for about another 3.5, 4 years. I was working on CT scanners and cardiac cath labs and X-ray machines, and had an interaction with a lot of different people. Still in the Army Reserves, which was a whole nother ministry opportunity there. But the issue rose again in my head because I was offered a promotion at GE. And after much consideration and prayer and so forth, I decided to take the promotion. And with that, the company would be moving me and my wife up, and now actually 2 daughters, to Wisconsin. So we went right into a church that was recommended by our former pastor in Kentucky. We went to a few services and learned that this church that we were joining, which was a fair-sized, well-established church, was going to be planting a new church in our small village that we lived in. And with that, as part of the small church startup, Lisa and I were one of the founding couples of this. We were very committed to this church plant. It was a small group, if you will. And we met at a local school gym. I was involved in setting up and tearing down the church every single weekend with a group of men. And, we also continued to lead these small groups and so forth. And I was being mentored by, the pastor and a group of elders that were just, at that point in my life, were really just totally instrumental in really loving me and guiding me and giving me wisdom, imparting their thoughts on it because they had lived it. And as we set up and tore down that church every week, I was very blessed. These mentors and the relationship that we had with these elder men who God put in my path. Although I took this promotion, I had time to talk about my career with them, and I told them about the struggle. And in fact, instead of feeling a great guilt, they just poured into me wisdom around what God really thinks about our work, and that you don't have to go into full-time ministry to do God's will, and that these men taught me about, your work really matters to God, what you're doing, the people you're around, the people you can influence. It was amazing turning point in my own mental process. And so, God put it in my heart. This was the first time where I felt like God's will and what I was doing mattered. But God put in my heart at a young age to seek responsibility, to do more. I always like an entrepreneurial spirit with entrepreneurial interest, starting things, selling things, doing things like that. I always like to build things, launching new ideas. Part of the reason why, I had a successful career at GE was, launching new products and new ideas and growing businesses. I really want to do God's will and use these gifts and talents. And during this time in history, back in the dot-com bubble era, GE would move people around all the time. Officially, I was on the corporate bus, what I referred to as a corporate bus, so-called, climbing the corporate ladder. And interestingly, one of the times I took a position, I literally received a ladder as a gift for one of the promotions. And on the side, it was written, corporate ladder. And so keep in mind, at this time, I was 28 years old. And I was running, huge businesses at GE, service businesses, $40, $50 million businesses. At 30, I was running a $500 million business zone, and fortunate enough to receive God's grace and his direction, because I felt that that's what I needed, that's where I needed to be. And I was super blessed to have an unbelievably supportive wife during this time as well. And so my purpose in life and my mission with God, what I felt was God's will, became infused with my work. I just couldn't separate it. From a prayer life perspective, praying at work, working with people, there's multiple examples over my career where, by God's grace, I was put in positions where I can really help people, whether it be even sometimes financially, praying with coworkers. Some of the best moments in my career, I remember praying over projects that we were doing in an engineering world or new product introductions, really helping people keeping your eyes open for opportunities to help. And of course, I give God all the glory, David. He put me in a position to see what was happening and act on it. And so my work indeed matters to God, and it became infused in me. It can't be separated. It's part of my mission. And I learned that unless we men out there can connect with what we do all day, with what we think God wants us to be doing, we'll never find ultimate meaning in either our work or our relationship with God. There's a whole piece on, the idea around work theology. And now more than ever, I believe Jesus Christ is relevant in our workplace. Perhaps now more than ever, CapeMEN find themselves struggling with this area, going to work unchallenged by the word of God, perhaps being unclear on how to tap into the resources of other Christian men for their day-to-day problems and decisions at work. Hence, this is a plug, CapeMEN, praise God that we have a group of men that care, that want to do this to help. Some men may be bored by their work. They may see no lasting value in it. They may feel that only in the religious life they can get meaning and purpose. Some may feel skeptical as to the relevance of Christianity compared to the rigors of the secular work world, right? Perhaps some men just need to be inspired to keep their ethical edge. This one hit me the hardest as I was preparing and thinking of this, David, is fearing that I may embarrass the cause of Christ by living inconsistently, a life at style at work, and then a lifestyle at home, or a lifestyle at church and a lifestyle at work. And, that's part of our growth. We're not perfect, but, we may be struggling as well to put work in its proper perspective. And, we fall to the many demands that compete for our time. It's easy to do. It's easy to backslide that way. Some men may simply lack the integrated life purpose that spans the public and private arenas. Men have a tendency, and we learned last weekend even about the boxes. We happen to think in boxes and so forth. So some may lack that integrated life purpose where they see this. And some may just lack the sense of dignity in their day-to-day work, and therefore they translate that into their life. They feel their work is meaningless, so therefore their life is meaningless. And we really are in a war with the world and the word. We've heard this said at Cape Christian, and over our lifetime, we've heard, you can't serve both God and money, or God and mammon. And we take this as we can never serve God in our work, and conversely, religion can never serve a purpose at our work. We think this, and this is a dubious assumption. This is what creates that tension that I felt, and I'm sure many men feel today. It really leads to an attitude of separating our work from our spiritual life, and that's a mistake. You can't separate, as we mentioned. This work-life balance. I heard that preached to me within the work world over my career for years and years and years. Oh, just have work-life balance. Well, it's such a lie. The fact is, you cannot separate our spiritual life from our work life. They're one and the same. And as I look into this too, God never intended our work to be separated from His work. He never did. If you go back, men, forgive me here if I'm wrong, but we have a big challenge on our hands with this area. There's a major tension between, perhaps even a discomfort when we talk about this, but when religion enters the workplace. And some of this is due to the way we live, as we mentioned. There's a dichotomy between the way most of us Christians live and what we are taught in church. We spend most of our time, as I mentioned at the beginning, working. Up to 75% of our time is working. And let's say 60% on average of our time is spent working. Well, then that means 30 to 35% is with family and sleeping and other things like that. But that would only leave us 5 or 10% of our time for church. And that's not what God intended. So the world of work and the world of church and religion has been separated over time. And that's just our current times, dictate that, and we fall into that trap. But, once in history, back at the beginning, this was bound together in one single life. Went back to Genesis 1 through 3. Work was created, and this is huge. Work was created before the fall. And a lot of people have this conception that work was created as a punishment. Well, definitely it was created before the fall. And when men are out there wondering if their faith applies to the work at all, it just causes, again, this purposelessness. They go through life thinking that they don't have a purpose. There's moral compromises that are made at work every day. We read in the headlines or on the news. Are we being ethical in our business and government? Research suggests obviously there's not a difference between the ones that sit in the pews and the ones that are working, and that's got to change. Careerism, this is a big watch out. For me personally, CapeMEN, this is where we idolize our career and measure our self-worth in terms of what we do. And we make our career our highest priority. And it's a trap that I frankly fell into early in my life. The word, there's a difference. There's this war I mentioned between the word and the world. In the word says deny yourself. So how can you serve others? How can you pour into other people? And the world at work says, oh, fulfill yourself. The word says, love thy God with all the heart. The world will say, hey, love yourself. It's all about you, work-life balance. The word and the word, we're clearly in this tug of war, right? And today, really more than ever, the workplace and in our community needs men to be moral champions. This gap between faith and work results in this tension and guilt that I mentioned that I experienced, and results in men feeling like their work does not even matter to God as much as church does, or full-time ministries would, or spiritual things would. And the work world has defined a point of view about religion, as I mentioned, and paychecks have a funny way of motivating me to cooperate. So consequently, in these battles between work and God and, all that, work tends to win hands down. So what can we do about this, David? We got to declare Christ's lordship. And Christ is the Lord of all of our lives, not just the work life or not just the spiritual life when we go to church. We want to pray, to God, in what role at work can I bring you the most glory, God? And there's multiple Bible verses that have helped me, Colossians 3:23, which I'll read. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as if working for the Lord, not for human masters. Romans 12:2, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And the good news is we don't have to discern all of God's expectations, and to memorize every Bible verse right now. We just need to have confidence in him. And this was a huge shift in me personally over the last several months, as God has re-inspired me in this area. Romans 13:2, I got two more verses here. Romans 13:2, consequently, whoever rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. So this one hit me in that, do we go to work sometimes dragging our feet, kind of like leaning back, letting other people maybe do the work, the hard, heavy lifting, or do we go and not rebel against authority, which we're put under? So in Colossians 3:17, whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it in all the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, giving thanks to God the Father through him. So work is a blessing. We are called to do our daily tasks as we're doing unto God. So don't consider your work as unspiritual. Respect authority and focus on your task at hand. That's my advice there. And then be the best at what you do for the glory of God. God loves excellence. God loves us doing a good work. God loves us when we're in a position of potential moral compromise, where we take the high road, or we turn hearts and directions of companies and business and what we're doing. I know I've raved on here, David, but and I know you were going to ask, hey Keith, what's the one takeaway? What's the one tangible thing? And here it is, David. The challenge for myself and the CapeMEN is to make a purposeful shift starting now. Shift from working for the power, the position, the ego, the fame, the money, the title. Shift from that to seeing our work as part of our earthly mission for God, and know that your work really does matter to God.
Well, and that's a great challenge to walk away with. But if we could, just in literally like 2 minutes, is there a one tangible way that you would do that? It's one thing to say, make that mental shift. Is there a something that you can recommend, a way that guys can do that this week, in the sense of when they go to work tomorrow morning or on their way to work today, what is that thing that they can fix their eyes on to make that switch?
The one thing that comes to mind right away, David, is pray. Pray for God to direct you in this area and give you wisdom and guidance, and pray for the opportunity to open your eyes to see the opportunity at your work.
Well, that's good. Keith, again, thank you for spending the morning with us and giving us some insight into this area that sometimes we do keep compartmentalized away from our church world or our church life. And gentlemen, that's the challenge this week, is start to remove those barriers and those walls between our spiritual life and our careers. So Keith, thanks again for being here. Thanks for spending time with us. Gentlemen, we'll see you next week. Same time, same place, new speaker.